day with love, we'll find a way as one. Across the world, our lives unfold. We're here together, gathering moment now. A song to sing out loud. Every road we climb, we are one. I started my first blog in 2001. I wasn't a tech pioneer because I don't own enough hoodies, but I did get ahead of the curve a little bit. This was years before YouTube existed, years before Facebook, years before Twitter. This was 16 years before TikTok, which I'm not even sure I'm supposed to know exists. I'm very, very old, as you can tell by my hair. But it was my first side hustle, and I got really excited about it. I started to write online. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know all the steps ahead of me. I didn't have a book. I hadn't given a single speech, but I felt like I had stumbled on something really amazing. And I started to study, what are the 3 keys to a successful side hustle? If you're really going to have a big side hustle, what are the keys? And I really started to research that. I still had a full-time job. I still had all the responsibilities of being a husband and a dad of 2 daughters under the age of 5, but I started to explore what it takes to have a successful side hustle, because here's what I felt like. Here's what I felt like I had stumbled upon. A side hustle is a superpower anyone can use. It's available to you. It's available to me. It's available to anyone. Now, it wasn't always easy. It wasn't. I remember in 2008, I planned my very first event. I said, I'm going to have a meetup. I had a blog, and I thought, I'm going to meet all the people that read my blog. So I went to a conference, and I said, can I use one of your rooms? I wasn't even speaking at the conference. Nobody knew that I was a speaker yet but me. But they said, sure, you can use one of our spaces. And so I got so excited. I talked to my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, and told them it was going to be massive. And they printed up 1,000 stickers about my blog for me to hand to all the different people who came. I bought bags of Skittles because I'd made a joke about Skittles on my blog, and I printed up quizzes to hand out to all the people that were going to come. And then I went to the room and I set everything up and I waited. Have you ever had that waiting moment? It's excruciating, isn't it? Maybe for you it was your first bracelet party. You were going to teach people how to make bracelets. Maybe you told all your neighbors, all your friends, all your coworkers, hey, come over. I'm going to teach you about this new cleaning product I found that I absolutely love. And then you wait and you feel like an 8-year-old waiting for birthday party attendees to show up. You stand there and you wait. And I waited there for half an hour, for 60 minutes, for 90 minutes. Do you know how many people came during that 90 minutes? 2 people. And one of them was my friend, and he came to encourage me. So really only one dude came, and he walked in and he said, hey, I don't read your blog, but my daughter does. Here, call her on the phone. And he put me on the phone with her. We had a 30-second awkward conversation. He left. I think he took 1 sticker. I had to carry back 999 stickers back to my car. Every real estate agent knows that. Every real estate agent has had the walk of shame, the cookie walk of shame, where you do an open house and you make 3 dozen cookies and one person comes and you carry 35 cookies back to the car. We've all had that moment. And in that moment, I actually had my friend take a photo of that because I wanted to capture it. Here's what it looked like. You can see me sitting by a trash can. Over my shoulder is a big bag of Skittles and just a sea of empty chairs. And I took a picture of that because I wanted to remember that moment. I wanted to share it with other people as they worked on their side hustle. Because here's the thing, that didn't stop me. I knew that I had enough belief, enough passion that even the awkward moments, even the challenging moments weren't going to knock me off my track. Because I had something really important. I had the first key to a successful side hustle. I had passion. Simon Sinek might call that a why. It's your belief, it's your drive, it's your desire. But it's not enough. It's a great starting place, but it's not enough because you actually have to do things. I meet so many people as I travel around the world talking about these ideas who have a passion, but they never take the next step. They never learn the next key, and here's the next key. Action turns passion into purpose. When you have a purpose, things start to change. You start to have more resilience. You start to be more dedicated, and it changes everything. And here's what I know. In this season, if there's one thing we all need, it is resilience. And here's what I know. The bigger your purpose, the bigger your resilience. When you have a purpose, you'll throw the parties that only a few people attend. You'll make the calls that somebody else won't make. You'll do all the challenging things. You'll put in the work. You'll sit down with your laptop and say, okay, I have a purpose. So that's really the first key. What's your purpose? And that's where every great side hustle starts. So my last side hustle was a book called Finish. And that book started in my own life. I looked at my life and realized I've got a lot of half-written books. I've got a lot of half-started projects. I've got a lot of notebooks with only 10 lines written in them. I've got a bike on my wall in my garage that shames me every time I go to my car and says, hey, remember when you were going to get into cycling? It was really easy for me to start things, but hard to finish them. And so I started to think, could I learn what it takes to really finish? And that became a purpose. So that's the first thing you need. The very first circle is you need to figure out, okay, as I look at my life, as I look at what matters, what's my purpose? The next thing you do, once you have that, you have to learn how to serve other people. That's the key. You have to figure out, how do I take this thing that I love, this thing that I'm passionate about, this purpose, and learn how to help an audience. Otherwise, it'll only stay you-sized. If it stays in your heart, your life, it'll only stay you-sized. Think about books. I write books. If I have an amazing idea, but I just put it in my diary and I put it on my nightstand, you never learn about it. You never see it in a store. You never get to be helped by it. So the next circle you need, the next key, you need to figure out need. What do people really need? As I look at my community, as I look at the people I'm trying to serve, what do they need? And sometimes that feels confusing. How do you figure that out? Well, here's something I've shared with Young Living for years. Anytime I get to talk to you, I share this idea. Read less minds, ask more questions. Read less minds, ask more questions. Now I know, if you're into grammar, this is killing you because it should say read fewer minds. I know, but rhythm is a dancer, and I went with less, and I feel better because less is a better rhythm. But sometimes we try to guess what people need. But I'm here to tell you the fastest, easiest way to actually help somebody's need is to ask them what they need. I would much, much, much rather meet a need than invent a need. It's really time consuming. It's really expensive to try to guess what someone needs. It's a lot better to just ask them and say, hey, what do you need right now? What's something you need? And here's what happens. When you ask someone what they need, they become visible and valuable. They become visible and valuable. And that's what everyone in your neighborhood, all your friends want to know right now, that you see them and that they matter. And here's why. Crisis magnifies kindness. A crisis magnifies kindness. I'll give you an example from my own life. A few weeks ago, I was trail running on this big trail, tons of space, and I saw this older gentleman passing by me. And we had 20 feet apart. We were social distanced. And I recognized him from the day before. I didn't know him, but I had seen him on that trail. And this time when I passed him, he gave me thumbs up. He did this when I passed. Now, 3 months ago, 6 months ago, some random old man in the woods giving me double thumbs up, I might have said, what's this guy's problem? Who gives double thumbs up? Now, though, because of the situation we're in, that meant the world to me. I thought about that the rest of the day. I told my wife when I got home, I said, this old man saw me and he gave me double thumbs up. I'm telling you about it. Why? Because crisis magnifies kindness. The tiny things you're going to do right now for your friends, for your neighbors, for your fellow team members matter 100 times more than they did 6 months ago, because crisis magnifies kindness. So when you think, okay, I'm going to send an encouraging email, that matters. When you send an encouraging text, that matters. And we start to explore, what do people really need right now in this season? What do they need? Well, one thing that they need that I know you care about is they need clean living. They need clean solutions. They need clean products. That's more important than it's ever been before. Think about it this way. In the 1990s, if you wanted to get into health food or clean living or pure products or organic, it was almost impossible. You had to hope. Here's what your hope was. You had to hope that your town had one of those weird health food stores that was usually the size of like a shoebox. It had 19 products and 18 of them were candles. And then you would go there and go, hey, is there anything new? Now, though, it's part of our national conversation, isn't it? Think about what Whole Foods has done for the march of clean products, clean living. They've brought it to the masses. Now everybody's asking that question. Okay, is this pure? Is this good? Is this helpful? And we've spent 26 years getting ready to answer that question. Have you ever thought about that? That we've got a 26-year head start on the questions everybody's starting to ask. Gary put that in place a long time ago. Here's how I think about it. Has the world ever needed thieves more than it does right now? As you look at your life, as you look at the national conversation we're having, has the world ever needed thieves more than it does right now? And it's amazing to think 26 years ago, Gary put this in place for moments just like this. 15 years ago, he put the thieves conversation in place for moments just like this. You're at the forefront of being able to say, hey, here's something I'm passionate about. Here's a purpose I have, and the need is growing like never before. What else do people need? People need financial flexibility. That's something that's really popular to talk about right now. Gone are the days where you would work for one company, you'd be there 30 years, 40 years, you'd get a gold watch, and then you'd retire and move to Florida. Those days will never exist again. Gone are the days where people accepted that debt was just part of life. Gone are the days where people said, you know what, I'm going to get $200,000 in debt and then just kind of see what happens after. Gone are the days where people didn't talk about money. It used to be that money was a sensitive subject, or salary was a sensitive subject, or adding extra income was a sensitive subject like sex, politics, and religion. But now people are talking about it. This next generation doesn't want to live under debt. This next generation doesn't want to be shy about money. They want to figure out, okay, how do I live with more financial flexibility? And to tell you the truth, that was a eureka moment for me with my own side hustle. The first couple times that I got checks, and they weren't massive. I got these tiny checks that came to me on the side of my life. I thought, wait a second. So if I hustle, if I work hard, I can turn on other faucets. I can get other revenue coming in and change my life. And not only change my life, but use it to finish some bills I have, finish some debt I have. That's what my wife and I did. We used my side hustle to pay off our credit cards. We used my side hustle to pay off our car loan. We eventually used my side hustle to pay off my house. And I'm going to use it to pay off college for my kids. I'm going to keep paying it forward. That's what's fun about financial flexibility. And the best part was I got to do it in my time, in my way. That's what I loved about a side hustle, is that if I got up early, I started getting up at 5 a.m. before the house woke up because I couldn't do it in the middle of the day. I've got 2 kids under the age of 5. Our house was chaotic, so I started getting up a little bit earlier, and I'd work on things, or I'd stay up a little bit later, and that's what you get. We call that thrive time here at Young Living. You get to figure out, okay, when do I want to work? Because here's what you know. A side hustle puts you back in control of your calendar. It lets you say, okay, these are the hours I'm going to work on it. This is when I'm going to work on it. If you want to knock out 10 minutes in the car ride or pickup line when you're picking up your kid for school, knock it out. If you've got 10 minutes that are free in another part of your day, you get to figure out, how do I do this? What does this look like? How do I make sense of this? You get to look at your schedule and go, this is what matters. And once you know that, you've got some purpose. You start to see a need. What do people actually need? And then you need the third key. You need to figure out your market. Where do I fit in the market? Where do I fit in all of this? Because that's what you do with a side hustle. For me, again, with Finish, I said, I don't finish things in my own life. There was my purpose. Then I said, let me see if there's need. And I started to ask people, is it ever hard for you to finish the things you start? Do you ever feel like you're a chronic starter but not a consistent finisher? And so many people started to say to me, that's my problem. I have 100 URLs. I have a bunch of URLs on GoDaddy. Like the second I have an idea, I register it, and then it just sits there. It sits there. It sits there. And they said, John, I read one of your books called Start, and it was helpful. It helped me start my goal, but I've never had a problem starting. How do I actually finish it? And so I identified a need, and then I had to do the third part. I had to figure out my market. Where do I fit in? And fortunately, with the internet, it's easier than ever before to figure out your market. My widget, my side hustle are books. So I went to Amazon and I looked up the word finish. And you know what the first thing that comes up? The first 20 items are dishwasher detergent. That's what comes up. Everybody was writing books about the beginning of a goal. Nobody was writing books about the end of a goal. And I thought, wow, there's a space in the market for me. Now, maybe right now you're thinking, John, I've looked at my market and I feel late to oils. Like maybe the market's oversaturated. Everybody knows about it already. Where do I fit in? And if that's what you feel, let me tell you something right now. That's when you lean into your story. Because here's the thing. People don't buy products. People buy stories. People don't buy a product. People buy a story. I was reminded of this recently with a friend who bought a Jeep. He test drove 17 different Jeeps. Eventually, his poor wife just texted the dealership and said, will you please make my husband buy that Jeep? And I talked to him one day, and we had just gotten up on this big ridge. We'd driven through a river and up a gorge, and we were overlooking this Tennessee Valley, and it was picturesque, and we were leaning back against the Jeep like some sort of commercial. And he said, John, I've thought about this Jeep. I've dreamed about this Jeep for 50 years. That wasn't a car to him. That was a story. Because people don't buy products, people buy stories. And if you want to figure out your market, lean into your story. I mean, that's why I own skis. I own snow skis. I live in Nashville, Tennessee, which, by the way, is 597 feet above sea level. That's our vertical here. It's ridiculous that I own deep powder snow skis. It's such a hassle to drag my case across the country and into the airport and fly all the way to Salt Lake City when I could just rent skis there. So why do I do it? Because skis aren't a product to me. Skis are a story. I remember when I was a little kid, I was in the 3rd grade, and we didn't have a ton of money. We were by no means poor, but we didn't have a ton of money. My dad's a pastor. And I remember we lived in New England, and we were at the airport picking up one of my dad's friends. And I saw this family checking in for a flight, and they were in those classic 80s ski clothing that's so popular now, and they had all their gear with them. And I just remember looking at them and thinking, they're going on an adventure. Like, they're going to do something amazing. And I thought, someday I want to do that too. And if I ever have enough money, I'm going to get my own pair of skis. And so I did, because it's a story to me. Think about Yeti coolers. People put stickers on their car to let you know how they keep things cold. That's crazy. In the 1990s, nobody put an Igloo sticker on their car and said, hey, I just want you to know how I refrigerate things. I'm huge into Coleman. I'm huge into Igloo. But here's the thing. A Yeti isn't a cooler. A Yeti's a story. Lululemon, they're not pants. It's a story. The best products have stories, and you've got to figure that out for your own life. Great business owners are great storytellers. So you have to lean into your story when you want to figure out your market. Carrie Major knows her story. In preparation for this conversation, I talked to a lot of Young Living members, and I'll never forget Carrie's story. Carrie had a cleaning company. And she started to feel sick from all the cleaning products she was using. It started to make her feel really ill. And her sister said, you've got to try Young Living. You've got to try Young Living. You've got to try Young Living. And eventually she gave in. Now, she was hesitant. She'll tell you. She was hesitant because she grew up living and working on farms. And she knew how easy it was for companies to throw around words like organic and pure and whole and clean. She'd seen it all. And she was skeptical. But she tried it. And then in her words, she said, it was like a fog cleared. It was like a fog cleared. And she felt so much better using organic, real products. And now she says that's part of her story. She loves that she can take the mouthwash and go ingredient, 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 and tell you every little detail. And they're all pure ingredients. That's her story. So if you want to figure out your market, start figuring out, okay, what's my story? What part of this is connecting to my real story? And how do I share that? And maybe your story is going to be massive. I talked to a business owner once, and I asked her, why did you start your business? And she said, well, my husband was a Green Beret, and he was in Afghanistan. And he was working over there, and some of his platoon got killed. And one night I said, I'm going to figure out how to run a business in a way that's successful enough to bring him back from Afghanistan. And if he wants to, we can afford for him to retire. Do you think that helps her in her conversations? That story, that's powerful, that's massive. But don't be overwhelmed. Don't think you have to have a massive one. It can be a small one. It can be that, you know what, when I pull out that drawer, when I open the drawer that has all my oils in it, just hearing the bottle shake a little bit reassures me that I've got an arsenal of support for my family. I've got a solution for that. When somebody has a problem, I get to say, oh, I've got an oil for that. And that's part of your story. You have to figure that out. And you have to make sure you have all 3 keys. You have to have a purpose. You have to have a need. You have to have a market. Here's what happens if you only have 2. Let's say you only have a purpose and you only have a need, but you never figure out your market. You know what happens? You have a cake pop. If you told me right now, John, got this crazy new idea I'm going to do. It's called cake pops. It's like a little cake on a stick. I'd say, dude, we have that. We've had it for 10 years. You're 10 years too late. You've got to figure out your market. Now, the good news is oils are just getting started. Young Living has a 26-year head start, but you're just at the beginning. You just had one of your biggest Aprils ever. I think your November is going to be even bigger and even better than that. The Young Living team is here to help you figure out your market. You're not in this alone. You have a team. You have a community. I mean, in April, we did a 4-part series called Pivot, Don't Panic, just so that we can help you figure out in this changing season, how do you grow your business even though everything feels upside down? You have a team that's going to help you figure out your market. Let's say you have purpose and you have market. You know what your purpose is, you know what your market is, but you never figure out how to serve people, you end up with a hobby. You end up with something that's interesting, but it's just a hobby. If you don't figure out need, it'll always stay a hobby. And sometimes what it takes to figure out need is rhythm. Here's how I define rhythm. Rhythm is doing the right thing at the right time in the right way. Be honest. Have you ever had one of those moments where somebody comes over your house and goes, "What's that smell? That smells amazing." And you launch into a 9-hour monologue about essential oils and you fire hose them down and tell them about the farm in Mona, Gary, the 32,000 ways you can use thieves, and they walk out stumbling and they never enroll. Why? Because you didn't get the rhythm right. You have to figure out, okay, the person I'm interacting with right now, what do they need in this moment? What portion of what I have do they need? And how do I share that in the right way? You have to hit need. And that last one, you have to have a purpose. If you have a need and a market, but your heart isn't in it, you end up with a day job. If you have a need and a market and your heart is not in it, you end up with a day job. And I almost didn't include this one, but I had to finish it out because here's the thing. Everyone watching right now is watching because they want to. Nobody had to be there. Sometimes when I do big corporate events, they have to be there. They have to be there for educational credit. Their boss asked them to go to this event. Nobody watching today had to watch. You're all watching because you have a massive, massive passion, a massive, massive purpose. So the question then becomes, okay, John, I have those three things. And I know I'm going to how to develop some of them, but now what? What do I do? Especially in a season where things feel a little bit upside down. Maybe not a little, maybe a lot of it upside down. What are some practical things we can do in this exact moment? Well, I think the key is that you've got to embrace the new January. This is the new January. Take out your goals from last January. Take them out and go, which ones still apply and which ones do I need to completely change? I mean, for me, for example, in January, I said, I'm going to speak 50 times at 50 live events. That goal is not going to happen this year. I need to take that goal out and go, okay, I've got a new January, and what am I going to do about it? Maybe I need to figure out how to do virtual events. Maybe I need to figure out how to encourage teams. I need a new goal, and so do you. I think you need to take your goals out and say, okay, we're in a new January, and we've got some amazing time to do some amazing things. I always think a crisis is an invitation to innovation. So look at your goals and say, okay, what do I want to do? Now, the good news is goals are not complicated. I'm going to teach you the 4 parts of a goal. The 4 parts are results. What do you want to happen? As you look at your life, as you look at your business, as you look at your side hustle, what do you want to happen? What do you want to accomplish? The second thing is timeline. Okay, how long will you work on it? How long will you focus on this? What are your deadlines? What are your mile markers from a timing perspective? 3, what are your actions? What are the actions that are going to help you actually accomplish the things you want to accomplish? And 4, what's your motivation? What are going to be the things that when you're stuck, when you're typing away, and you feel frustrated, what's the motivation that's going to carry you forward? Now, I want to walk through each one of these and give you some practical things that you can do today. But before I do, I need to tell you a quick idea about perfectionism. Stop trying to pick a perfect goal. Just pick one and perfect it as you go. I meet so many people as they work on their side hustle. They say, John, I have 20 possible ideas. Which is the perfect one to start on? And then they wait and they wait and they wait and they wait and they never pick one. I'd much rather you figure out, okay, I've got 10. I think these are the 3. I'm just going to pick this one and then perfect it as I go. So don't get stuck looking for a perfect result or a perfect goal. Just pick one that makes the most sense in this season and then start to apply some actions to it. Start to apply some motivation to it. So let's look through each one of those. When it comes to results, especially in a season like this, it can be really hard to dream. It can feel discouraging to dream big, can it? I mean, some of us are discouraged. Some of us are having sleepless nights. Have you had any of those sleepless nights yet where you look at the alarm clock and it's 12 o'clock and it's midnight and you give your body this like pep talk? You go, look, if we fall asleep right this second, we can still carry the 6 hours of sleep. And then you close your eyes and you tense, and then 10 minutes later you go, ah. And you look over at the clock and you go, seriously, now if we fall asleep, we can still get 5 hours and 50 minutes, and you just keep going all the way down. It can be really tense right now to dream about new opportunities. So I want to teach you a simple trick. I want you to write down this sentence, and I want you to answer it a few different times. I want you to write down, this is impossible, and. This is impossible. I recognize that, and I'm still going to do it. This is impossible, and I'm going to be a Royal Crown Diamond. This is impossible, and I'm bringing 10 new members the convention next year. This is impossible, and I'm going to find 5 new builders. This is impossible, and I'm going to sell 1 million copies of my new book. This is impossible, and I'm going to hit the New York Times list. This is impossible, and I'm going to run 1,000 miles in a year. Now, those last 2 I know aren't impossible because I've done them. I've done those 2 goals. I hit the New York Times bestsellers list. I ran 1,000 miles. And the reason I tell you that is I need you to know something. The things you think are impossible, somebody has already done. The things you think are impossible, somebody just like you, a stay-at-home mom who's got 1 million responsibilities and kids swinging from the chandeliers, has done exactly what you're thinking about doing. You're surrounded, when you're part of Young Living, with thousands and thousands of people who hit the goals that you want to hit. And I need you to know something. You're capable of more than you think. You are. You're capable of more than you think. How do I know that? Because everyone I've ever worked with has been. Sometimes we're the worst judges of our own character, of our own abilities, of our own talents, and we need people in our community to say, hey, I see something in you. I see possibility. So that's what I want you to do. I want you to answer that sentence. Today, this is impossible, and what are you going to do? Even though it might feel impossible. Maybe you want to write it down on your computer. This is impossible, and I'm going to contact 5 people that I'm meaning to get in touch with. That's the first thing, results. What about timeline? How do we think about timeline? I want to think about timeline with 2 questions, 2 simple questions. 1, what do you want to be true in 90 days? 90 days from now, what do you want to be true? Let's just look up 3 months. It's really hard to look a year ahead, 2 years ahead, 3 years ahead, but 90 days from now, 3 months from now, what do you want to be true? Another way to ask that question is, what would have made this crisis easier? Think about it that way. What would have made this crisis easier for you? For me, let's say YouTube. Having a robust YouTube channel would have made this crisis easier because I would have had another revenue stream. I would have been able to communicate with people. It would have made things easier. Okay, well, knowing that, now I'll go build that. Over the next 90 days, I'll go work on that. So think through that. Right now, would being good at Zoom have made this crisis easier? It would have been. So now go build that over the next 90 days. So look up 3 months. And then the second question I want you to ask is this: how do you win the day? So you look 3 months ahead, and then you look at today. You have more control over today than any other day. Every day you go out, there's less and less control, but today you have the most control you have. What would it look like for you to win the day? If you got on your laptop and said, here's how I'm going to win the day, what would you say? Would it be that I contact 3 people? Would it be that I took a shower and got out of the house on a walk? What does it look like for you to win the day? So there we talk a little bit about timeline. What about our actions? How do we lean into actions? Let's keep that really, really simple too. I'll give you 2 steps. Do something and then measure it. Do something and then measure it. And here's the key. It doesn't have to be perfect. Remember, the perfect way to fail a goal is to try to do it perfectly. I'd love for you to just try something and say, I'm going to try it and see what happens. I'm going to work on it. And sometimes you won't even have to pick the something. Your friends will help you. Sometimes other people say, hey, I see a hole in your business, a hole in your side hustle I think you should lean into. That happened to me. I spoke to 1,300 people. I got off stage, and a woman came up to me. She said, John, I love following you on Instagram. You're so funny and tall. She said one of those sentences. And then she said something that was a punch in the stomach. She said, I didn't know you wrote a book. I've written 6 books. For her to say that was to say, you don't do a good job running your side hustle. You're not deliberate. And she was right. And I went to my Instagram feed, and it was mostly jokes about queso and pictures of dogs I wanted to pet. And I realized, oh no, most event planners, corporate event planners, one of the first things they do when they book me to speak is they go to my Instagram account and go, what's he all about? Has he written any books? Has he been to other countries to speak? What has he done? And if you went to my Instagram feed, you didn't see any of that. And so the thing I needed to do was work on that. So I went to the most honest person I know, my 16-year-old daughter. I said, hey, am I good at Instagram? And she said, use Instagram like an old man. And I said, well, you're hired and you're grounded. It was a very confusing day for her. I mean, it could have been worse. She could have said, okay, boomer. But she said, you've got to change some things. So I want to show you one of the things she changed with me. Just one, do something, an example from my own life. Take out your phone, or pretend you're not on your phone right now, and look up John Acuff on Instagram, Jonacuff. I just want you to see what she did to my bio. She said, Dad, your bio is so long, it's terrible. And I said, it's a paragraph, it's 3 sentences. She said, we're a very busy generation. We don't have time for whole sentences. She said, it needs to be emojis with hyperlinks and bullet points. And I said, I don't know what some of those words mean, but let's change it. And we did. And not only did we change it, but I'm measuring it. I'm watching it grow, because here's the problem. Progress you don't measure doesn't exist. Progress you don't measure doesn't exist. And here's an example. I call it the candle theory. If this room was pitch black, let's imagine it's pitch black. There's not a single light, a single window, and I lit one candle, it would be dramatic. That first candle would be amazing. The second candle would be amazing too. The third, the fourth, the fifth, I would see the impact. But then candle 100, candle 200, I barely notice the difference, and it get really discouraging. That's what happens with Young Living. You come out excited. You're passionate. You've got all this purpose. But then in the middle, on the road to silver, on the road to diamond, there's a lot of little bits of work you have to put in. And if you don't measure it, you won't even see it. So you have to keep a record. You have to say, okay, things are going. Here's where they're going right now. I'm measuring my progress. So that gives us the progress report. That gives us something we can say, these actions are working. But what about motivation? Here's the last part. And motivation is challenging. The problem with motivation is this. The very first thing to leave during a goal is your motivation. We think it's going to be with us for the entire goal. We do. But do you know when people quit their goals? A PhD named Mike Peasley and I did a study. We studied people over a 30-day period to see when in that period did they quit their goal. Do you think they quit on day 10? Do you think they quit on day 12 or day 15? No. The largest drop-off we saw was day 2. Day 2 was when more people dropped out than any other day. Why? Because on day 2, the work shows up. Day 1, pure motivation. Day 1, you're excited. You think, this is going to happen. I'm doing it. But day 1 is just motivation. Day 2 is when the work shows up, and sometimes the work chases away your motivation. You have to be really deliberate to hold on to your motivation, to lean into it. How do you do that? You make war with distractions and make peace with your commitments. You've got to be really deliberate about making war with your distractions and peace with your commitments. For my own life, for instance, one of my goals is I want to get better sleep. I want to be better at getting better sleep, longer sleep. I have a hard time sleeping sometimes. I don't know if anybody's noticed that. Like, pandemics aren't the most restful nights of sleep. And so I realized, okay, one of my distractions is my phone. If I bring my phone to my bedroom at night, game over. Sleep is over. I'm going to end up scrolling through Instagram, watching Netflix, following long YouTube threads where people make whole cars out of Legos, really useful, helpful stuff to my life. And then I'm going to look up at 1 a.m. and go, where did all the time go? So for me to make war with that distraction is simple. I leave my phone in the kitchen. I plug it into the kitchen and I have to say, I'm sorry, you don't get to come into that room. I love you. I do. But you don't get to come into that room. That's me making war with that distraction. And then with my commitments, I commit to the things that matter. I commit to my kids. I commit to my spouse. I commit to my work. I commit to the things that I need to do, and I'm deliberate about that. And I commit to my purpose. And here's the thing I know about purpose. You've got to keep it front and center. Sometimes people hold their breath when it comes to purpose. They look at it maybe at the beginning of the week. They look at it maybe at the beginning of the year. Like, that's the problem. People don't make New Year's resolutions. They make January resolutions, and they only look at them during January. And then by February, they can't hold their breath any longer. I'd much rather you get a snorkel. I love that idea of getting a snorkel for your week. What's a snorkel? A snorkel is a way to remember your purpose. So a snorkel might be a phone call to an encouraging friend. It might be a playlist that you love, that you listen to, that gets you up. It might be writing out your goal, your purpose, your mission with Young Living, and put it on a Post-it note so that every time you get on your computer, every time you log in, you see that and it reminds you there's a purpose. Add 100 snorkels. I want 1,000 snorkels. When I'm discouraged, I want it easy to be encouraged. I don't want to have to hold my breath all week and go, I hope I remember my purpose. I want to have snorkels everywhere. And those are the 3 things we need. If you're really going to have a successful side hustle, you need purpose, you need a need, and you need a market. And I started by telling you that story of that room that I'm sitting in, and I'm all by myself, and I'm by a garbage can. And 11 years later, 11 years after that moment, I was on stage, and I was speaking to 8,000 people, and it hit me that I was 500 yards away from that room. I was in the very same arena, and I still had my purpose. I still had my need. I still had my market. And nobody knew it but me. And I remember that moment. I remember the moment of being in that room. And you know what? I'm going to have some more moments like that. There are going to be book signings I do where 4 people show up. A book signing is like having an awkward garage sale, but the only item for sale is your heart. And and you go, would you like this? And people go, I don't know, $11 for your life's work seems a bit steep, while they drink a $9 coffee. I'm going to have some hustle moments, but I'm not afraid of them. Why? Because I've got a purpose, I've got a need, and I've got a market. And you do too. Today, my last challenge to you is simple. I want you to take one of those three things, the one you're going to work on, and then I want you to tell one member of your team, hey, I watched John's presentation, and here's the thing that struck me. Here's the thing I'm going to do. I'm going to lean into my market. I want to understand my market better. Or, hey, I'm going to do a better job of listening to what people really need. Or, hey, I'm going to touch back in with my story. I had a story. I had a passion. I had a purpose for Young Living. But as I got busy, I kind of lost sight of that, and I need to reconnect to that. That's my challenge to you today. Pick one thing and work on it. It's been my honor to share some ideas with you today. I can't wait to see what you do with them. Every moment now, a song to sing out loud.